Hi everybody. Today we're going to talk about light and lighting, and there's a couple of things that I want to do. So I came outside because this is where you have the best light, right? Because white light from the sun is kind of what we're doing. You can see I'm kind of like a little blinded by it. Well, I often joke that lighting designer's job is to blind the actors. One of the things that we know though as actors is that if you're looking at the light and you can see it in your eyes, you're in it. As soon as you walk out of it, you're not in it anymore. So the other thing that I did was I made sure that I had my hat on. And reason being is I wanted you costumers to see just what hats do for direct over light. And that's kind of what we have in the Beacon Theater Workshop is direct over light. We don't have a lot of uplighting and stuff that we can use. So as you can see, this is much better. You get more facial expression and whatnot, but it also affects colors. So if we look out back here, we've got this nice brick color, we've got the wood pattern here. This is actually kind of like a really light yellow. I get my red shirt and the gray here. We know from looking at the set for Midsummer Night's Dream that if you change the color on a light gray or on a white, all of a sudden you get a much different color because it's not absorbing as much light, it's actually reflecting some. Everything does that. So everything that you're going to put light on is going to reflect another light. So what we're going to do today is we're going to play around with a few different applications that are online that I've given you guys links to. And with these, I'm going to put my hat back on because this is really bright stuff. Okay. There we go. And we don't want me to have a red head either, right? Not good. Not a good look. So we're going to mess around with these applications, and we're going to look at Gobos, which are shapes that you can make texture with light, which is always really cool. We're going to look at colors and intensity, and we're going to look at top light, front light, side light, back light, and what all these different things do when you are creating a lighting design. And that's your next task, is you're going to create these lighting designs, but it's okay. You're going to create them virtually. Take some photos, zip those photos out as your assignment, and I think we're gonna have some really cool looks as people try to devise, what would I like to do for lighting for Midsummer in this scene or in this scene. And I'm looking forward to it. This ought to be fun. See you back in a second. So here we go with lighting. So you're all gonna be lighting designers for a little while, and we are working with the first of 3 programs by Matt Kizer, and these are really recent. These are last year. Matt Kizer of Plymouth State University, which if you don't know where that is, it's in New Hampshire and is a really good school, particularly for stuff like this, like computer programming mixed with theatrical work, etc. These are beautiful ways to try to understand light. So what I have up here is we're going to start with color. And what's up is we have the 3 primary colors of light: green, red, and blue. So what's happening to the shadows is we end up with the secondary colors of light. So if you're dealing with pigment, right, if you're dealing with crayons and color pencils and stuff, your primary colors are red, yellow, and blue. And your secondary colors are when those colors mix. So you end up with, purple when you mix red and blue. You end up with green when you mix blue and yellow. And you end up with orange, when you mix red and yellow. So my mind is on lighting right now and not on pigment, so we're getting goofed up here a little bit. When you are dealing with lighting, here's what happens. Right now we have white in the middle, because when you put all of the colors together, it's white. Because all the colors of light put together would be white, versus all the colors of pigment put together would end up kind of being like really saturated black. So let's take out one of the colors. I'm going to take out the red. Bye, red. So what we have in the middle is what green and blue mix as. And what they mix as is called cyan, which is that really nice kind of like sky bluish color. So that's a really cool color to play with. I'm going to put the red back in. We got white back again. But what happens when we take out the blue? We get amber. So amber is this beautiful, beautiful color, of course. We get to play with that a lot, and it's color mixing, that works really, really well as a secondary color to play with when you're doing like daylight scenarios. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to take out the green. Taking out the green gives us magenta. Everybody's favorite, magenta. And so magenta is, of course, a much darker color because you've got the blue and the red, which are kind of opposite ends of the light spectrum, and we end up with something that's kind of deep in the middle. So let's bring back our green, and we can see the magenta shadow here, the amber shadow here, and the cyan shadow here. And the reason those shadows are casting in those colors is because of how those color combinations are coming out. So the red's coming from here and the green's coming from here, giving us an amber shadow. The blue's coming from here and the red's coming from here. I'm sorry, the red's coming from in back, the blue's coming from here, and that gives us the magenta shadow on the opposite side. And likewise, these two are coming from the front, so we get the shadow on the opposite side, that's cyan. So let's try to goof around with some stuff now. We can actually take and pull these out. Let's get rid of all of these. Okay. The second section here is how intense this one gets. This is where it falls on the spectrum. So let's just play with the actors right for now. We're going to bring up the intensity, which is how much of the light we're getting. We're going to have it at half intensity, right? Now we're going to choose kind of the shade. So this is like if we were on the light board and we set this to 50%, that's where it would be. Now we're going to get kind of the shade of the light. So if we're staying with blue, blue comes in all these different colors. This is actually still blue over here. It's just really, really, really light blue. So we're going to go for a medium blue and a medium light. This would change our color. That would bring us out over here. We'd be able to change it to anything else we wanted. So we're going to stay in the blue spectrum right now, just so that we get an idea. So we've got those two here, and we're in the blue spectrum. Let's do the same with the red in the backlight. And let's do the same with the green on the other side. And we have a much different tone here. We're using the same colors, we're just using different intensities now. So we're using different intensity, different shade. And so shades and tints are up here. This is our intensity, and this is our color palette. So we can play with all sorts of things here from all different angles to give ourselves different looks. All right, so I'm going to make a look right now. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull into my kind of like lavender spectrum. I'm going to pull the backlight into the light blue spectrum, or maybe I'll throw that in lavender as well. Okay, and then I'm going to throw the green into the amber spectrum. And if I up the intensity on the amber, other than having kind of a pretty big shadow over here, I've got sort of a natural tone. This is more like indoor light. Indoor light tends to have a little purple to it, a little bit of yellow, and most of my shadows are gone, very indistinct, but I've got a purple shadow over there. So what happens if I take this one from the right and I move that into the amber spectrum? And then I up that intensity as well. Well, now I've got very, very little in the terms of shadow play on the actors themselves. But what I do have is I have some really nice alternate light that's helping, coming from the backlight, which gives me some really nice shadow play. I can take the backlight totally out and just have this. All of a sudden my actors turn yellow. That's not really helpful. So let's take from the right and let's add that lavender back in. We've got the intensity up here. That actually is pretty good too. That gives us more of a natural tone. So if I were to take one here that's yellow and another one that's in the lavender, then one here that's lavender and another one that's yellow, and I cross-lit them, because this is cross-lighting, I'd end up with a really perfect kind of shade of indoor light. So how do you get outdoor light? Well, you've got to kind of change things around a little bit. So this has got to come into the blue, and this has to go into, oddly enough, this is nighttime, by the way. If you get into too many blues, you get into nighttime. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to move this toward the kind of like darker orange spectrum. And then this one, I'm going to go ahead and that's also going to be in that orangey spectrum. And I'm going to bring up the backlight to half. And I'm actually going to bring it really light, almost to white. And this is more daylight-ish. I can make it even more daylight-ish if I go right ahead and I lighten up these. We become more and more daylight outside in the sun. If you want to make it look even more like the sun, what you do is you put in a little more blue, honestly, because that's kind of weird, right? But that's how it works. Incandescent lights tend to have kind of an yellow tint to them, and outdoor lighting kind of tends to have a little bit of a bluish tint because, well, it's being filtered through the sky, right? And the sky ends up turning blue because of the way that it refracts the light coming through the sun. So a little bit of that blue does make its way down. And we've got ultraviolet and there's those sorts of things in there. So this is what daylight lighting would look like. And those are a few types of lighting. I'd like you to fool around with this. I'd like you to kind of like go, well, what if I wanted a really, nighttime scene because I'm doing Midsummer Night's Dream. So I'm going to have some fun. And what would happen if we went backlight of really dark blue, and shoom. And then what would happen if I pulled this blue over here and we got all blues going on with a little bit of purple. Remember, we still got to see the actors. So even if it's nighttime, as weird as it is, we still have to see them. So this looks sort of like Twilight-ish. And no, I don't mean the vampire novel. But it gives us kind of a sense of it's dark out. And kind of mystical because we've got the purple in there. I want to show you something that we would not want to do. And there's certain colors that do certain things to the human body on stage. And it's kind of like, honestly, it's a little nasty. Something I don't like doing, but it's actually sort of funny. So if we were doing a zombie show, there we go. Like, look at the skin tones on those two people. And they have two different skin tones, by the way. They kind of blank out and they become really sort of gross. So there's certain scenarios where you can do that. It's the same thing with any of the intense colors. If we were to do red on both sides, we end up getting, they turn pink. We do blue on both sides and they're going to be kind of like day glow. Like that's travel blues, basically. So if you were to go ahead and you were to change a scene and you need it to be as dark as you can, that's what you do. That's called travel blue. So those are just some things. I'd like you to fool around with some different looks, fool around with some different colors, find some stuff, and then take a screenshot of your color design and how that works for you. That's the first part of the assignment. The second part of the assignment is we're going to play with the Big Light Lab. The Big Light Lab is, again, Matt Kizer's Light Lab. What we have is he calls this his dance lab. So we've got three different types of light here: cyclorama, side light, and top light. And then we've got side light gobos, and a footlight. And then specials. So these specials are all hung up here in upstage right, upstage center, upstage left, and so on and so forth. So you got center stage here, right center, left center, down right, down center, down left. And we're going to play around with those. As far as the gobos go, we'll hit the gobos in a little bit. We'll come back to this. So the cyclorama right now is everything's red. We have a full spectrum here. We can play with anything we want to. So if we take red and then we combine it with some green, right? Or we turn it green. That's kind of weird looking. Hey, it's Christmas. Let's move it to amber. And you'll see in the spectrum here, look, red turning into green makes amber, green turning into blue makes cyan, blue turning into red makes the magenta. So there we go. So let's kind of get amber going from all sides. What happens if we turn everything amber? Other than the fact that it looks sort of sickly, I actually had somebody, I was designing a piece from Singing in the Rain, and they asked me to do yellow light because everybody was wearing yellow. That's not a good idea. Imagine if all these people were in yellow. Then we'd have all this yellow, and it would be really ugly. Now we've got the chance to kind of play around with this a little bit. So let's take the cyc and make it lighter. Let's take the top light and turn the top light into something more along kind of the cyan spectrum. And make that brighter as well. Actually, you know what? Let's go to the lavender spectrum, because we already learned that lavender and white does pretty well for that. Now side light, we're going to keep side light as amber as well. There we go. All of a sudden we have something that looks a little bit more, let's make this a little brighter. Looks a little bit more like, say, an interior lighting, right? So let's play around a little bit. Upstage right. That's got nobody in it. But downstage right? Ooh, here we go. Isn't that cool? We don't have control over the color of these though. They're all going to be white. Footlight, same thing. Gives us ideas about how big the shadows get as well. So if we do the footlights, which are coming from right here, see these things here? Watch, turn them off. Yep, no more lights. Okay, center stage, that's her, and upstage left. There we go. So we've got lights coming in from the sides here that are shooting pretty much just straight over like this, coming from the top, and the cyc itself, which is shedding light coming out this way. So if we were to switch the cyc to the lavender and switch the top light to the amber, what does that look like? Oh, that looks even better. What would be really cool is if we took the side light and then we added that into the lavender spectrum. Bingo, now we're looking more like we're in the daytime. And we'll just brighten these up a little bit. Look at that. Now we're interior day. And we already know the combinations for the other stuff. So fool around with this as well. And you've got all these specials all over the place. Yay, specials. So you've got lighting areas, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lighting areas here. And you can't really move around your performers, but you know, you get an idea of where you're putting lights. Okay. Last thing we're going to look at is we're going to look at the gobos. So to begin, select light. Okay, so all these lights are, this is what we call ghosting. So when a light is unfortunately like left on just a little bit, that's what happens. This is just a straight light. So if we go for this selection and we turn this on, it's just going to be a light like that. All the rest of these are what we call a gobo. And a gobo is these cutouts that go in front of a light and turn it a different shape. So these just get like, these are so much fun. Let me turn that one off there for a second and turn it back on. Oops. Oh, there it is. Okay. On and off. There we go. So there we go. That's just a straight white light there. So what happens if I go ahead and I'm going to grab this light and I'm going to do this. Choose this gobo. Little spooky. That's okay. And then I'm going to choose this gobo. Ah! Weird. Let's do this gobo. From here, from front light center, I'm going to grab this one and turn that on. Again, a little bit weird, but that's okay. Adjusting backlight. I'll do this one and see what happens. So that's coming from behind them, big shadows like that, and so on and so forth. So you can do all sorts of things. Like, I mean, this is Midsummer Night's Dream. So let's take and make ourselves a forest. We already put this one on. We're going to put that to a forest instead now. Actually, I think this forest works better. Yes. Backlight. Oh, hey. Go to this. Backlight going this way. Go to this. So we're making this texture. So now we've got this nice texture going on here. from actor's left, from actor's right. Using a lot of the same texture. Okay. Side light from actor's light. Might be able to use this. Ugh, no, not good. That's better. That's not quite as good. Bubbles! Well, if we wanted to have it fun, we'd do bubbles. Or like our set. There's a whole bunch of different things you can do here. And so I'd like you to experiment with gobos. So let's go back to this one. Side light gobos. Here we go, look at that. Side stage right gobos. So now if we brought the front light, the footlight up, and we brought the front light, the top light rather, down, that's what we get. We get these amazing shadows and highlights and textures and all sorts of fun stuff going on there by adding in these gobos on the side and just making this texture. So that's what we would use gobos for. Not as much as on the other portion. We would only use gobos here and there. We don't use gobos on the entire stage. It doesn't usually work very well. So but that gives you an idea of what the different gobos look like from the different angles, which is kind of where you want to go. Okay, looking where they look like from where they're coming. And this is your color lab. So you get color lab, gobo lab, and then the full out. Take a picture of each of these after you make a design. Post each of those pictures onto a Google Doc, and then explain to me why you made the choices you made for your scene of A Midsummer's Night's Dream. And it's the same scene that you did the costumes for. It's the same scene you did the scenic design for. You know, figure it out. What should this look like lighting wise? Pick your colors, have some fun, experiment. And if you think you want to do more than one and you want to take several screenshots of all different things that you've designed, go right ahead. It's absolutely fine. Play with this. Okay, enjoy yourselves, and we'll see you at the next lesson.